What's up guys, John Bird III here. We're back again for another video. Today's video, we got a little treat. We're talking about my top water setup. I think I have probably the best top water setup that I've ever fished. And I was going to talk about the rod, the reel, the line, of course the baits that I throw on there. But I'm also going to give you an alternative rod that will be a great addition for you to add to the lineup. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right into it. So the next 2 Saturdays coming up, I have a tournament over the next 2 Saturdays on Lake Murray. So I already know it's going to be a big top water tournament, essentially. Schooling, offshore, cane pile, brush pile, points type of tournament, right? And so lately, this past week, I was on Lake Jocassee doing some underwater filming and stuff like that. And I was throwing around the Sexy Dog. And I was throwing on this exact setup. And the spots and the largemouth were coming unglued on the Sexy Dog. But I was very, very pleased with how this setup really handled. So that's why I wanted to dive into it. I realized I haven't done a video on my top water setup, so that's why I feel like it's essential that I need to go ahead and do that. As you know, in the fall, people start throwing a lot of top waters and stuff like that. But also, it's a big thing here on Lake Murray, so I figured I'd just go ahead and jump into it. So, the rod. The rod that I have is a Team Lose Signature Series. This is the KVD Top Water Rod. And so this rod is a 7-foot medium fast. And it has a very short butt. So it's easy for you to work the top water and you ain't gotta worry about the butt hitting you over here and stuff like that. And that makes it comfortable to fish with. The rod is, all the Signature Series rods transparently are very, very light. So that is one thing, that's another great feature about this rod. It's lightweight. The 7 foot is not too long. You hear some guys make like a 6'10" because you ain't slapping the water. I'm not that tall, I'm 5'5". And 7 foot, I don't slap the water with it. So, I mean, it's perfect. So 6'10", 7 foot, somewhere between that 6'8" to 7 foot, I think it's probably the perfect top water rod as far as like being able to work the bait. Because essentially all you're doing is popping slack. So when the fish actually hit the bait and this rod loads, it loads very, very well. And so one thing I haven't talked about, and this is going to be something that I'm going to mention in a different video when I start talking about general rod knowledge, and we're going to do that video actually pretty soon. But one thing I want to talk about in particular is the lure rating. So it says 3/16 to 1/2 ounce. And I haven't talked about this in any of my other videos yet, but every rod has a sweet spot somewhere within that lure weight rating. There's always a sweet spot. So when you find that sweet spot for that rod, you will see, like when you're making longer casts or skipping type casts, once you find that sweet spot for as far as the weight of the bait, you will be able to see and get the optimal performance. Sometimes when you put baits on rods and it's too much weight for the rod doesn't perform correctly. And also it's the same thing when you do baits that are super, super light that don't load the rod. You'll feel like, man, this rod doesn't work right. So every rod has a sweet spot. So once you find that sweet spot for that rod, you know what baits it will work well for. So the regular size, the standard size Sexy Dog works great on this rod. I've thrown the Sexy Dog Juniors on this rod, works pretty well. I've thrown the I'm a Little Sticks. I've thrown skimmers. I've thrown a lot of different top water baits, the Mock Patrollers, and they all work great on this rod. But personally, I like the Sexy Dog on this rod, the standard size. Great rod for that. Long cast, it loads well, and you're able to really, really like sling that bait way out there. So that is what I like about the rod. The reel is a reel that I've mentioned before. I think I've already done a video on this reel, and that is the Team Lose HyperSpeed reel. So I'm not gonna go into too much detail just as I have because I already did a video on this reel, but it's a 9.5 to 1. It brings in 40 inches of line per turn of the handle. Now, one thing that I want to talk about with a reel and just reels in general, especially this one, is you will not get the full inches per turn on a reel if you don't have your spool full to max capacity. If you have a halfway spool or 3/4 spool of line on the reel, you will not get the full inches per turn on the reel. And that's just something, a note that I feel like you guys need to keep in mind anytime you're putting line on your reel. So make sure you fill your spool all the way up to max capacity. That way the reel is optimally working to its full potential. You're getting the full inches per turn and it's going to work like it's supposed to. So, and also it allows you to make longer casts as well. When you have less amount of line on there, you're not able to get the full long distance cast that you might be looking for. So just keep that in mind. This reel right here will allow you to bomb cast baits. And I've pretty much, anytime I make a long cast with the Sexy Dog, I have almost spooled this reel. I have a little bit of backing on this reel, and it's only enough just to cover the bottom part of the spool, right? And that's why I put the backing on there. And a lot of times when I make a long cast with this, I just about spool this reel. And I don't have to worry about backlashes like that. And I'm going to talk about the line that I have on here in a second. But as far as the castability on this thing, it's great. So great reel. It has the ACB braking system, which basically means you don't have no internal pins you got to adjust. All you got to do is adjust your brake pedal on the outside, adjust your gas pedal. That's it. Y'all know I like simplistic reels. That's why I love this reel also. And it comes on the LFS frame. Super compact, feels good in hand. That's just what I love. So that's the HyperSpeed line. Now, this is going to be a little, I don't want to say controversial, but it's going to be a little bit different than compared to what a lot of other people say. My line is I have 50-pound Contra braid. And you're probably like, why do you have 50-pound Contra braid? Well, originally, the HyperSpeed was my frog reel. And then I was on Santee and I was throwing a frog. I got bit and the fish got bogged down in the grass. Anytime you get into those higher gear ratio reels, you can't turn the handle. And so I switched to the Super Duty 7.5-1. Never had an issue there. But this reel works perfect for the Sexy Dog because, I mean, you're not having the fish dog down into like grass or anything like that. This is just open water type fishing. So this reel works great for the Sexy Dog. So that's why I switched. And I've never changed the braid on here. So 50-pound braid is overkill. But my reasoning behind that is because I've been on a boat with a couple other people. They've used 30-pound braid. And I watched them literally cast off their spool multiple times in a day because of the size braid that they have. And I was like, I don't want that issue. I don't have time for that. So I've always used 50. That's why I haven't changed. And so I don't have to worry about casting it off. I know it's going to be super duper strong. Granted, I don't really necessarily need that. But I don't bend out my hooks either because of the braid either. I don't rip the hooks out of the fish's mouth or anything like that because of the 50-pound braid. And it's just a system for me that just works. Like it just straight up, it just works for me. So that is why I have 50-pound braid on here. I've considered dropping down to 40, but I like 50. The only issue sometimes when you get into that, well, it's not even bigger braid. Braid in general, when you backlash braid, it is like the world is coming to an end because it is a nasty, nasty backlash. So, but especially the big braid, but braid in general, you backlash braid on a bait caster, just throw the rod in the water. No, I'm just playing. Don't do that. But that's how you feel. So, but that's the braid I got on here. 50-pound Contra braid, works great. So the bait that I have is the Strike King Sexy Dog. So this color right here is Chrome Sexy Shad. Chrome works very well on Lake Murray. Anywhere there's blueback herring, chrome works the best. So chrome is your friend. Chrome to the dome. So that's what I have. And this is actually the hard knot version of the Sexy Dog. So why I like the hard knot version, I go back and forth between the standard Sexy Dog and the hard knot. The reason why I like the hard knot is because it has a subtle thud to it. It has like a one-piece knocker in there, and it's very subtle, and it's like a thud noise versus the regular standard Sexy Dog that has the BB. So you hear all the rattles, and it just, you know, sound like a normal topwater that has a whole lot of rattles. So that's why I like the hard knot. Especially when you have a lot of pressured fish, you want something that's might be a little bit more subtle, just to try to get those a couple extra bites throughout the day. So that is my setup for my top water walking baits. I mean, I also throw like poppers on here. I throw, like I said, like your whopper plopper slash mock patroller style baits, any type of plopping style baits, I throw that on this setup. Pretty much my all around top water setup is this setup right here. So another rod that I said I'll mention that I use is, it is the KVD Series Rod, and this is the GC2. And it is actually labeled the jerkbait rod. It is a 610 medium heavy fast. And you'd be like, some people think like, and I thought this at first, like, man, this is too much rod to throw a jerkbait on. But where it works perfect for me is the bigger top water. So like I said, like I mentioned, like the Armor little sticks, like those are pretty big and they have some weight to them. So any top water bait that has a little bit more weight to them, I will pick up the medium heavy fast. And don't let the medium heavy fast kind of keep you from trying it and using this as a top water rod, because the KVD can use this for a jerkbait. I'm telling you, you can use it for a top water. And when you're throwing those bigger ones that really try to call those fish up from those 20-foot cane piles and stuff like that, when they hit this thing, this rod loads incredible. I mean, incredible. So I'm gonna have this rod rigged alongside my other setup right here, and that is what I'm gonna use probably the next two weekends on Murray. I'm definitely have both of these setups rigged up, ready to go on the water for fishing Lake Murray, because top water is what's on right now. Alongside with throwing like a caffeine shad, that is another big one. And you know, those fish get real finicky and they just kind of want to hug the bottom and throw a drop shot. But we're not talking about drop shot, we're talking about top water. So those are my two rods. So both rods are KVD rods. One is the Signature Series. And then normally, I don't know about, I don't really talk about prices of the rods. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But the Signature Series, they're priced at $189, and the KVD Series are priced at $109. And so you're both getting great rods depending on whichever one you, however much you really want to spend. And just to be completely transparent, you don't need to spend a lot of money on rods that I would consider being, I guess the word maybe like more reactionary style rods. So like crankbait rods, top water rods, anything where you're throwing like a moving bait, like even like a trap, something like that. You don't really need to spend a whole lot of money on rods like that. I watched a video from another pro a couple years ago, and he was talking about his rod setups. And what intrigued me was, he said the same thing. He don't spend a lot of money on the reactionary style rods. He spend more money on his rods where you're dragging stuff on the bottom. So your jigs, your Texas rigs, your drop shots, stuff like that, where you're having to feel the bottom. You're trying to feel what type of bottom you're having down there. You're dragging stuff, whatever you're flipping, anything like that. That is where you spend the bulk of your money on. And for the most part, ever since he said that, I kind of kept that in the back of my brain. And the actual pro was Justin Lucas. And I thought that that was a real honest, transparent answer when trying to decide rods. And actually, logically, it makes a lot of sense. So keep that in mind anytime you're looking for rods. If you're looking for a bottom contact rod, look for something maybe a little bit more on the pricey side. And when I say pricey, I mean whatever would you consider is pricey. Like if you can afford a $500 rod, I don't suggest going out and spend $500 on a rod. There's nothing that I feel like you can tell me that this $500 rod is what you need. But I say $200, $250 might be my cap, transparently. Even though I have a couple Elite Series rods and they're $350, but $250 is like the cap for a rod. So somewhere in that $100 to $250 range, I think you can get a lot of great rods for the money within that price point. And even some rods that are below $100, there are a couple good ones out there, a couple sneaky good rods out there that you can get that will work very great. Again, but those are my two top water setups. Those are the two rods that I recommend: the KVD Signature Series and the KVD Series rods. The GC2 in particular is labeled, like I said, jerkbait 610 medium heavy fast. So that's it for today's video. This is actually the third time I tried to shoot this video. First time, didn't have no audio. Second time, I left my tripod at the house. So this is third time. So That's it for today's video. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Let me know what your favorite Topwater rod is. I'm JB3. I got to get back to living a dream, and this is going to be the third time I'm going to try to upload this video. So I'll catch you later.